Welcome to the April 2026 edition of Upfront and Real, brought to you by Ohio Cooperative Living Magazine and Ohio's Electric Cooperatives. I'm Karen Whitney, Director of Communications, and with me, Craig Grooms, our President and CEO. Boy, Friday the 13th, March 13th, a day that really lived up to its reputation. The windstorm that came across Ohio, just a couple of facts here, gusts near 80 miles per hour, poles down, lines down, a peak of outages 87,000 in our cooperative service territories. I mean, that's a big storm in comparison, and how do you prepare ahead of time for something like that?
Well, you think of what our distribution co-ops normally do. Their standard practices, construction standards, they build their system to withstand most things. They do vegetation management, make sure their right-of-way around the lines are clear. They do inspections throughout the year, but there's some things that you really can't expect, right, or predict. And typically, what they've seen is even a right-of-way might be clear next to the line, but you have a tree falling down from outside the right-of-way, you can't really control for that. But I think it all comes down to they have good work standards, they plan their system well. It's pretty resilient for most things. They make sure the vegetation is clear, but when the wind is that strong, it's hard to really prepare for everything. And then our distribution co-ops are reliant on the transmission systems as well to deliver electricity, and the transmission system has the same issues. Whether it's on wooden poles or steel structures, trees coming down, you still impact the transmission system just like the distribution system. So you plan as much as you can, have high work standards, high construction standards, try to keep the trees and vegetation away, and then you wait and see, and hopefully it's not too bad.
Yeah, it's almost like putting back together a puzzle. This is a very complicated puzzle. And this is the stuff I like to talk about the most when we have to do a restoration work, and when it's a lot of it, how co-ops come together to make that happen. I mean, how does that, pull the curtain back a little bit, how does that happen to get all of that restoration going and then back on? I mean, I think a week's time.
Yeah, it takes a lot of coordination, and so our safety department manages all of our mutual aid requests. So as co-ops are seeing outages, they inform our statewide department, our safety department. Our directors of safety have their contacts in other states, and once they've had the opportunity to assess how much damage there is, how many outages, they can begin reaching out to states around that have been less impacted by the storm. So we were fortunate in this case where we could reach out. Kentucky provided some mutual aid, a couple crews from Virginia. We had a lot of assistance from Indiana, so we really appreciate those states. Ohio has done that, in the past, responded to co-ops in need in other states, and we received it this time, and so it worked out well.
So I've got some of the data from our safety director. We had a total of 31 cooperatives from Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, Virginia, 90 linemen, 36 bucket trucks, 9 digger trucks. Co-ops here in Ohio, if you didn't have damage, you were helping your co-ops that did have damage. I mean, just a lot of mutual aid going on. And it didn't just end there. I saw some pictures of restaurants in those communities, in those co-op service territories, serving those linemen. I mean, that's really exemplifies the co-op spirit.
Yeah, it is, and we all acknowledge how frustrating it is when you lose power. I lost power for a day, and you forget how often we use electricity. I was still walking through the house, flipping switches, even though I knew the power was out. It's just part of our everyday life. It's like breathing almost. We just assume electricity is going to be there. So we understand the frustration, and our distribution co-ops really appreciate the community support, the restaurants, the meals. Trying to get power back on as quickly as they can and safely as they can. There's a lot of safety concerns during outages like this where the system is not in its normal state. There's a lot of trees, sometimes it's bad weather, it's windy, and so you have to be very methodical and safe when you're restoring electricity. But it starts with we recognize and we understand the frustration when you lose power, but there's a right way to do things, and we appreciate the communities when they support the linemen, the other co-op workers when they're trying to restore electricity.
Yeah, I never can sacrifice safety, balance that with, the patience from our members. So really appreciate that. And coincidentally, April is Lineman Appreciation Month. Yeah. So Anything that you would say out there to at least the line workers in Ohio and those surrounding states?
Yeah, it starts. I mean, perfect example was this windstorm. We really appreciate all that you do for us to keep electricity flowing. I like to wrap in our power plant workers as well. They work under a lot of stress, bad weather conditions, and so we appreciate all the line workers, and we recognize and acknowledge and appreciate everything they do, and we also appreciate our employees at the power plants who different conditions, but a lot of stress, a lot of bad weather. We need the power plants operating year round, especially when it gets really cold or really hot. So we appreciate everything that they do, and it comes from the heart.
It's teamwork,
Yeah.
right? Takes everyone together. And you mentioned cold. I think we've seen all 4 seasons this weekend. So hopefully by the next episode of Upfront and Real, we'll be into spring for sure, and summer, and stay there for a little while.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next month.